Dave Armstrong is a playwright and a satirist. He is a multiple award-winning playwright, and he writes for The Post. There you go. I didn't balls it up the very first time. I said The Post. I didn't say the Post, which you don't say anymore. I said The Post. And we want to welcome Dave to the show to have a chat about what he put out today. Dave, good evening to you.
Kia ora koroa. Good to be here.
Kia ora. Good to be with you, sir. Hey, now, we've been talking about Simeon Brown.
Yeah.
And his absolute, I was going to say brain fart over the weekend as to what he said. Okay, this is a little bit judgy and a little bit wrong of me, but I'm reliably informed by several insiders who know the inner workings of Parliament that he's not a very smart guy. So maybe he just thought he was making a very clever, good move to get votes, and it's ended up bouncing back incredibly poorly. So much so that the walk back over the last couple of days has been ridiculous to watch and has been... has just been farcical, you know. No, what I meant was if old people can't read road signs, then that might be dangerous. You know, just absolutely ridiculous justifications for things that were never said over the weekend, but it's that revisionist history saying, no, this is what I meant. This is what I meant. So we've been talking a lot about that. Look, do you want to just have it? You got, because your article, your writings today addresses this brilliantly. But before we kind of have a look at your writing and talk more about that, do you have anything you want to add or say to that overall conversation that we've been having the last couple of nights?
Yeah, well, I think that's interesting. You're talking about Simeon Brown. On one hand, yes, I've never met the guy. I don't know how intelligent he is or not. I think on some things he's been very well spoken. But the thing is, you say that you sort of had a brain fart. He's saying what, I suspect the majority of national voters think. I don't, or certainly in regional New Zealand, I don't think there's a great technique where people go, oh, that's just an extremist, or that's just someone, on the fringes. I mean, the left do that too. Actually, what he's saying is pretty mainstream National Party thinking in a lot of the provinces. So I don't think he's a minority. But what he's done is he's mucked it up for the caucus, because the caucus, New Zealand's a great little place. The Labour caucus are always to the right of the people that vote for them, and the National caucus are always to the left of the people that vote for them. And so what he's done is he said what you're not meant. He said in public what you only say at the family dinner table.
Yeah.
So
he said out loud what he's supposed to keep in his head.
That's right. And then of course, Luxon did the same thing. He said, "Oh, I can't tell the difference between Te Whare Ora and Waka Kotahi." And even though Luxon's learning Māori himself, and he's actually been sort of in some ways quite progressive on the whole race relations debate. So it's a massive cock-up for the National Party, because they've got their own members saying things. And I don't know if you watched the newsroom, they got the people as they walked out, and Harete Hipango, she was just like furious at what Simeon had said. And then the guy from Hamilton East, his name escapes me right now, but he was very sort of moderate, and he said, "Yeah, I'm relaxed. Yeah, but you might be relaxed, but look what's going on, So I sort of personally just reflected on that and thought, they've got a pothole here, the National Party. They're banging into it. Because
a pothole's an appropriate thing. They've got a pothole. They now need to fix it, because the other thing they're doing is they're promising all of us that the roads are going to be perfect once they get in, which is a nice thing to have. I was going to say as well, you talked about, people don't know what the words mean. I saw a journalist talking to Chris Hipkins about that. I'm going to say it was Jenna Lynch. It's always Jenna Lynch. It may not have been Jenna Lynch, but there was a journalist challenging Christopher Hipkins as to what Waka Kotahi meant. She's like, what does it mean? And he's like, well, it's a New Zealand Transport Agency, but what do the words mean? And Christopher Hipkins went, I don't know. And I thought about that for a while, and I went, Chewy, do you know what the word Patrick means? There's a meaning to it. Do you know what it means?
No.
But you still use it in the context of what it's for, which is my name. It means nobleman, if you're just wanting to know. That's what it means. It means nobleman.
Fancy man.
It is, but you don't know the meaning of the word, but you can still use it in a correct context. In an appropriate way. So it was a stupid question, and now it's a stupid argument about people don't know what this means. If I didn't know the definition of my street name, I'd still know where my street was, and I'd still know what it was called to identify. So that's all like just a bit of bullshit, if you ask me.
And the other thing with Māori too is a lot of names, and like in English, the names don't always make sense on the first thing. Like you could think, Waka Kotahi means first waka, first canoe. but it doesn't, and so you get this sort of people have to think about it. But I think that I've really watched closely the whole Don Brash thing and the whole anti-Maori on radio and anti-Maori street names, and I think there's a very deep underlying hostility amongst many Pākehā, not a majority, but a minority that really hate the fact that this is happening, and they really find it's a threat to their life. And I just think Māori makes my life, Māori language makes my life more interesting. And as a writer and a satirist, I can make jokes in two languages. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic that we have this rich, what I call New Zealand English. I'm not a Māori speaker, although I've tried to learn some te reo, and I do use it in my writing. But I just think it's fantastic. We have the apple tree and the pear tree of English, and we have the plum tree of Māori, and we can pick the fruit and make it one great big fantastic sort of language. So I don't see what the problem is about. If you're driving, you're going to get the idea. If there's two names, you're going to just your eyes are going to go to the one you understand. And the other thing too is, like I noticed today, they said, let's just have Māori for the unimportant stuff. This is from the National Party things. But let's have English for the real important stuff. Now, what message are we sending there to people? We're saying here that okay, this isn't a big font, so it's in English and it's important, but the little font is just for the people that, and I think that's the most offensive thing you can do in a country where it's meant to be bicultural, and where you've signed actually an agreement that says we'll try and have an equality.
There is also going to be, Chewy, road signs that already have Māori and English on them. I'm sure if you go into Waikato somewhere, there'll be a road sign that goes Rotorua that way, Hamilton that way. Oh my God, it's got Māori on it and it's got English on it, and no one seems to have a problem. So if it says Dunedin and Otepoti, what's the big deal?
We've got road signs that are entirely in Māori.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with road signs, is that they should be clear and understandable whether you understand the language or not. That's their whole purpose of being. And there's so many countries in the world that have bilingual signs, and they've just managed it. I think this just says it says worlds for what National think of people, is that there's no possible way that they can adapt. It's just all too hard. We don't want anything to change. And people are adaptable. People are flexible. They have the mental plasticity to take in new ideas. And I think your comments about people in the regions pushing back against this sort of stuff, I think it comes from one of two places. It's either they feel fragile, that they don't know this sort of stuff. It's like whenever you start something and you don't know, it makes you feel a little bit small and vulnerable. Like I other people know this better than I do, and I feel bad, right? And then there's the people that are like, it's a little bit more weaponized. It's no, because I'm a white person and white people are on top. And they might not put it as bluntly as that, but that's certainly
actually, Tim Vandermolen, who I actually respect as an MP on some things, he said, he didn't say on top, he said in a bigger font, and I just think that says speaks volumes.
Yes.
That just a slight, we need a bigger font for English, and I've worked in museums and stuff, and the whole point about what you put on top or what you put on bottom, how you do it side by side, it's quite an issue. And the thing that comes loud and clear to most rational people is equality. Make it the same. If you have to put one on top of the other, then mix it around. If you put them side by side, that's better. But don't make one dark and easy to read and one light and difficult to read. There's things you can do. But I think I should also say, Don Brash is a very urban person, so let's not only blame the regions for this. It's a nationwide thing. There's pockets in the cities who are, but I absolutely agree, Chewy. It's an insecurity. It's like, oh my God, these people are flexing their muscles, and that could be the end of me. And I think that it's exactly the opposite.
And I think actually the National Party knows that the narrative they're pushing is not true. I think you're both right that this is a feeling, let's say, coming more commonly from the rural area, but I don't believe the National Party actually buys into it, but they know it will get them votes, which is the definition of dog whistling.
Yeah, I look, I'd say a majority of national MPs certainly don't agree with it. And a lot of their people, and they've said, repeatedly, no, we support Chris Bishop, Nicola Willis, we support bilingual signs. It's just that, they're a broad church, just like the Green Party are and just like the Labour Party are. And so they have a variety of views. And you could, as an impartial observer, say, yeah, but their political management on this is not too great. The other thing I'd say is while I do think there is I wouldn't call it a hatred, but there's an insecurity about the road signs. And this is something I tried to do in the satire and the column, is I don't think everyone that sort of runs up their hands and says, "Oh my God, this woke stuff. I can't understand it. What's happening to New Zealand? And they're calling it Aotearoa." I don't think everyone that says that is a terrible racist. I don't think they're not white supremacists. They're not horrible people, Nazis trying to, they're sort of, if you, the terrible thing about being a satirist is you start liking your targets. And I started writing this guy who drives his granddaughter in his Lexus to Hamilton, and he hates calling it Kirikiriroa, and he loves that Auckland's named after a person we've never heard of and don't ever regard in our history. And the terrible thing is I started making fun of him, and then I started really liking him. And the one Maori guy at the bowling club that happens to forget his pen to sign a petition against the new Maori name. The terrible thing I have as a satirist is I like the people that I take the piss out of. And so I end up going, well, they're not all bad. They're not all terrible people. And I do think this is true about a lot of people that are talking about road signs.
I think perhaps a big part of it is they are, and I don't use this as a put down, literally as a not having enough knowledge. They're ignorant as well. And
there's a bit of ignorance going on.
Ignorance is not necessarily bliss. Like I've told the story before about knowing a really elderly person, really, really elderly, who has passed now, who made it to past 100, who had some very horrible things to say about the Japanese people in general. But when you get to hear her backstory, that her husband was taken as a prisoner of war in Japan and came back a different man, you have the ability to step aside and say, I hate the words you're using, but I can give you the grace for why you have that feeling. And when you talk about not, starting to like some of the subjects you're talking about, it's like, I think, and I'm not in your position, I haven't written like you, but when you hear some of those things, let's say it's these people who have been sucked into the anti-vaxxer world, I typically, as best I can, feel empathy first for them. But then for the instigators, you feel pretty angry, especially if they're grifting. So feel pretty angry about this when it comes to the National Party, because they're playing a dog whistling game. But for the people who don't understand, like I put a message out today that says, if people don't get yet that even if you're not Māori, the Māori story is a part of your story if you're a part of New Zealand, because it is part of New Zealand. If you don't get that, then you're missing a whole part about being a Kiwi. Now, you've mentioned the writings. We should probably get to it as well. We don't have to rush. Actually, do you want to respond to what I've just said, Dave, before we get to this? You're more than welcome.
Oh, no, just I agree totally. And I think you have to take people's background, you have to take their age into account. When my father, who died a few years ago in his 90s, when he was a kid, people would talk about horo whenua, because they didn't realize WH was a f sound. And I grew up saying horo whenua because that's how I was taught. But I lived in the world of really bad mispronunciation. So I'm really good on whangarei because I've never lived there. But parapara umu, we always called it Paraparaumus kids. So I'm one of those people I'm satirizing. I'm that guy.
You've said it the long way. I've heard people just call it pram.
Oh yeah, well they do that. We never got that. Luckily, we never got that bad in my family. But and so I think New Zealand is a work in progress. And to say to people you disagree with, oh, you're a terrible person, how dare you win the election, or how dare you? I don't have that view, and I like to think that I work with people from all sorts of walks of life, and sometimes some of their attitudes might horrify me, but they never horrify me enough to say write them off as people and don't be nice to them, and don't think that they're not redeemable. And I think that makes me not as vicious a satirist as I could be, but I also sometimes think being gentle can make more points than being nasty.
I actually experienced that today. Actually, I had a man that decided to tell me a story that involved him imitating an Indian accent.
Yeah.
And in previous years, I probably would have ignored it. Online, I would have called him all manner of nasty names. But in person, I was like, I don't think that story really needed the imitation.
Yeah, that's right.
And he kind of went, oh, you know what I mean? And I was like, yeah, you were talking to a person in a call center.
It
doesn't change your story. But you know, so maybe for next time. And he kind of just went, but I really, you know, I think that'll stick with him more. Than a more aggressive approach.
As someone who's made mistakes and tried to write comedy, and you know, we all. Who knows where the bodies are buried? You know, I think it's a far better approach is to be sort of reasonable and talk about it, and not pretend that you're just pure as the driven snow, and that you know everything you've already. I've made terrible mistakes and had to apologize and stuff. So I mean, I don't believe in everyone being sort of holier than thou, and dare I say it, as a self-declared lefty. Sometimes the left can be pretty tough. You know, you've got to do all the right things and tick the right boxes. And
we've done whole shows on that.
And we've been the target of the left in the way that you're describing pretty heavily.
You know, I've got the T-shirt. No, me too. So I think that's a thing one can get very critical. And of course, you know, when you're in the industry, as I am occasionally, of trying to make people laugh, sometimes you can miscalculate or say something that offends people.
Well, this one has made a lot of people laugh. We were just talking before we came on air about this has gone a little bit viral, this article, so much so that it was behind a paywall. We think it's probably not now because I don't pay a subscription to be a part of the post. You know, I can see it. So we're assuming it's not behind the paywall anymore. People can investigate that for themselves. The way I found it was to look up Dave Armstrong, and I looked up kibosh because I thought there's probably not too many articles that you've written with the word kibosh in it, Dave, and that was a pretty easy way.
A little known fact, I didn't write that title. So if you write a column in New Zealand, you don't write the title, you just write the column, and then they come up, and it's very clever. I've got very good sub-editors because, of course, kibosh is a foreign word.
Exactly.
And so they've nailed it on that one. But yeah, so often people write to me and say, I didn't like you using the word kibosh, you know, in your column. And I go, well, actually, I didn't. It was someone else's job to make the to do the headline. But everything else is mine, including the typos.
In fact, what I'll do right now is I'll just put it into the YouTube chat so people can find it for themselves should they want to have a look. Right. So let's have a look at the article, because what you've done is very, very clever and very, very funny. You've taken on the persona of someone in the... let's just read it. It says, the other day I drove the Lexus to Tauranga, or Safe Anchorage, as we call it at my North Shore Bowling Club, which has admittedly made us a bit of a laughing stock since the Rena disaster. Anyway, I come up to a stop sign. Underneath is a word in Māori I don't understand. The stop sign could have been saying, don't stop, stop, not really, or stop if you like it, feel like it, or stop only if you're not Māori. But I don't know, because like most of us at the bowling club, I only speak English. I'm not going to read the whole article out, Dave, but some bits that particularly tickled me. You're talking about, as you said before, about your granddaughter, well, the character's granddaughter, and that granddaughter's, and I'm going to use the word, you don't use this word in the article, but she's a bit woke and she understands more of this Marialism.
That's right.
And this is about your the granddaughter. It says, she says I'm a racialist, but how could I be if my favourite rugby player is Ruby Parsonsbird? Ruby Tui, got it.
Parsonsbird, yeah.
Parsonsbird. Boy, that girl's a dag. Anyway, the granddaughter needs to get back to uni, so I give her a lift. With granddaughter in the Lexus, she's able to translate all the Māori words on the traffic signs. You're never going to believe it, but they mean the same thing in Māori as in English. I drop her off in Kiriroa, or long stretch of Graveltron, as we call it at the bowling club. Who would have thought Māori predicted boy races all these years ago? Clever buggers. Something else you say of these bowling club people with the granddaughter, we drive straight to Mangere, or lazy as we call it at the bowling club. To be honest, the folks at the bowling club called Mangere lazy well before that they knew that was the literal Māori translation. Very clever, like that bit. And you finish off by saying, come on, people, this is New Zealand and we speak English. Labour Party, is that apparatchiks? What's that word? Apparatchiks may think it's de rigueur to pollute our language with potpourri of foreign words and phrases and expect Kiwis to accept this carte blanche. No can do. We will remain in cultural cul-de-sac if we continue this laissez-faire approach to English. It's time to say adieu to foreign-sounding road signs. I tip my chapeau. I'm going to go chapeau to Chris and Simeon for turning this into a cause celeb. Let's have a blitzkrieg on wokeness and take a tomahawk to bilingual road signs until they are totally verboten. Brilliant, funny, loved it, and wanted to talk to you about it today. Yeah, golf clap. Lovely, Dave. Very, very nice. And I remember, I think I often find watching stand-up comedians are sometimes the people who can tell the most truth with comedy. You know, they can really cut to it by using comedy to speak absolute truth. And this article is brilliant, and the way you've done it is so perfect. And I wanted to talk to you tonight and acknowledge that on the show. And people,
thank you very much. It's great to have a chat. And like I say, I even though it's humor and all that, the other thing I'd add too is that this guy, I think, is typical in that you know, when I think that the thing that terrifies white New Zealanders the most is being called racist, especially by Māori. And I think a lot of, you know, what I've loved writing about that character is like, he is someone who loves Ruby Tui and thinks she's wonderful. And he's someone that you know, he does have Māori friends and he thinks they're great. And he thinks his granddaughter's great. She's just got a bit of shit on the spark plugs, you know. So I think it's important to acknowledge that when you call out stuff like this or talk about it, things, you know, it's not a dastardly. These people are not terrible people, but hopefully the national debate, for want of a better word, the nationwide debate makes everyone a little bit more tolerant and a little bit happier. You know, if I've done, I got a great tweet where someone said, I came home in a bad mood today, and then I read your column and it made me laugh. And for me, that is better than any award or any adulation or, you know, circulation numbers. One person out there just smiled a bit, and you know, that's a sort of cool thing to hear.
I'll remind you of that when you win your Tony, Dave. That a person smiling is better than any award. It's better than any award.
Mate, I won't even be in the long list or the extra long list.
Dave Armstrong, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you, I guess, trusting us to jump on and have a bit of a chat. Really enjoyed having you here, and thank you for your writing. It has brought a lot of joy to a lot of people today as we see it floating around the internet. So thanks for coming on, and good on you.
Thank you very much. Great fun.
Cheers, mate.